They found Emma's car 3 years ago, abandoned 4 miles outside of Phoenix. Doors open, keys still in the ignition. No blood, no signs of struggle, nothing, just gone. The police searched for weeks. Mom never stopped crying. Dad started drinking. And me, I became obsessed with finding her. My name is David Chen, and I'm 27 years old. Emma was my younger sister, my best friend, the person who always believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. She disappeared on October 29th, 2021, 2 days before her 24th birthday. For 3 years, I chased every lead, every rumor, every whisper. Private investigators, psychics, Reddit forums, missing persons groups. I tried everything. And then, 2 weeks ago, I got a message from someone claiming they knew what happened to her. The message was simple. Your sister went to NoEnd house. If you want to find her, you'll have to go in too. I'd heard of NoEnd house before. It's one of those urban legends that pops up in different cities. Always the same story. A mysterious house that appears for one night only, promising $500 to anyone who could make it through all 9 rooms. Nobody ever wins. Some people say they barely made it past room 4. Others never came out at all. The message included GPS coordinates and a date, October 28th. Tomorrow would have been Emma's 27th birthday. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. What would I say? That I was driving into the desert to find a haunted house based on an anonymous message? Mom and Dad had already given up hope. They'd buried an empty coffin last year, just so they could have somewhere to mourn. I couldn't put them through this again. So, I went alone. The house stood exactly where the coordinates said it would be. A 2-story Victorian structure that had no business existing in the Arizona desert. It looked normal enough from the outside, almost charming, with its wraparound porch and warm light glowing from the windows. But there was something wrong about it. Something that made my skin crawl the moment I stepped out of my car. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the lobby looked like it had been decorated by someone whose only reference for Halloween was a dollar store catalog. Paper bats hung from the ceiling, plastic skeletons grinned from corners. A handwritten sign read, "Welcome to NoEnd house. Make it through all 9 rooms and win $500. Good luck." There was only one other door in the lobby, marked with a big number 1. I should have turned around. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to leave, but Emma had been here. I knew it in my bones. And if there was even a chance, even the smallest possibility that I could find her, I had to try. I opened the door to room 1. The first room was laughable, honestly. Cheap Halloween decorations, the kind you see at Halloween stores in September, fake cobwebs, animatronic ghosts that moved on tracks, recorded sound effects of chains rattling and wolves howling. I actually relaxed a little. Maybe this was just some elaborate prank, some weird attraction that Emma had gotten caught up in. Room 2 was more of the same. Fog machines, rubber baths on strings, a soundtrack of generic spooky sounds. I was starting to feel stupid for coming here. Room 3 had a few jump scares, figures that popped out when I walked past certain points. My heart rate increased, but it was still obviously fake, still just a haunted house. Room 4 was where things changed. The room was almost empty, just a wooden chair in the center, a single dim lamp in the corner, and wood-paneled walls and floor. But there were shadows. Multiple shadows stretching across the floor and walls, even though the only object in the room was the chair. I tried to go back through the door I'd entered, but it was locked. I was trapped. As I stood there, frozen, the shadows began to move. They peeled themselves off the floor and walls, becoming 3-dimensional, becoming solid. They had no features, no faces, but I could feel them watching me. And I knew, somehow, I just knew that they were feeding on my fear. I ran to the far door and threw it open, stumbling into room 5. This room was completely dark. Not just dark, absolute darkness. The kind of darkness that makes you question whether you still have eyes. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I couldn't see anything. And then I heard breathing. Not my own, someone else's. Close, right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there, just darkness and that horrible, wet breathing sound. A voice whispered in my ear, "Why did you leave me?" It was Emma's voice. I started crying right there in the dark. "Emma?" I called out. "Emma, where are you?" "You left me," the voice said again, and now it was coming from a different direction. "You let me disappear. You didn't look hard enough." "I never stopped looking," I screamed into the darkness. "I never gave up on you." The breathing got louder, closer, and I could smell something now. Decay, rot, the stench of something dead. I felt hands on my shoulders, cold and clammy, and I screamed and ran, my hands outstretched, until I crashed into a wall. I felt along it desperately until I found a door handle. Room 6 was lit by a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. The walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them, thousands, all of Emma and me. Emma and me as kids building sandcastles, me teaching her to drive. Emma at her college graduation, me standing beside her, both of us grinning. But as I looked closer, I realized something was wrong. In every photo, Emma's eyes had been scratched out. And in some of the later photos, she wasn't smiling anymore. She looked terrified. In the most recent photos, ones I'd never seen before, ones that must have been taken after she disappeared, she was alone in dark rooms, her face gaunt and haunted, her eyes, when they weren't scratched out, completely empty. One photo was different from the rest. It was newer, printed on fresh paper and pinned to the center of the wall. In it, Emma sat in the same chair I'd seen in room 4, but her face was wrong, distorted, like someone tried to recreate her from memory and got the proportions all wrong. Written across the bottom in what looked like blood were 3 words: "She's in room 10." But there were only supposed to be 9 rooms. Room 8 was my childhood bedroom. Not just similar to it, it was exact. The same posters on the walls, the same video game controllers on the desk, the same crack in the ceiling that always looked like a rabbit. Even the smell was right, old cologne and worn leather. And sitting on my bed was me. Not a doppelganger, not someone who looked like me. It was me, David Chen, 27 years old, wearing the same clothes I was wearing, with the same scar on my right forearm from when I'd crashed my skateboard when I was 12. I looked up at me and smiled. "You're not going to find her," he said in my voice. "She doesn't want to be found." "That's not true," I said, and my voice shook. "She's been here for 3 years," the other me said. "She's part of the house now, and soon you will be too." "No," I said, backing towards the door. "No, I'm getting her out of here." The other me stood up. "There's no getting out. Don't you understand? The house lets you think you've escaped, but you never really leave. Your sister made it to room 9 3 years ago. She thought she'd won. She thought she was free. But when she got home, everything was just slightly wrong. Her family didn't quite look right. Her house didn't quite feel like home. Because it wasn't home. It was room 10. My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "Room 10 is the real world, or at least the house's version of it. Perfect in almost every way except for one thing. It feeds on you, slowly. It takes your memories, your personality, everything that makes you, you, until there's nothing left but an empty shell walking around pretending to be human." "That's not real," I whispered. "Emma came home. I would have known if—" But then I stopped, because I remembered. I remembered Emma coming home a week after she disappeared, confused, disoriented, claiming she'd had some kind of breakdown and needed time to think. I remembered how she moved back in with our parents, how she quit her job, how she spent all her time in her room.
I remembered visiting her, trying to talk to her, but it was like talking to a stranger wearing my sister's face. And I remembered the day Mom went to check on her 6 months after she came back and found her room empty. No note, no goodbye, nothing. Just gone. A second time. The second time, the police barely looked. Another missing person, another case that went cold. "Oh, God," I said. "She never left. She's still here." The other me smiled wider. "She's in room 10, where she's always been, where she'll always be. And now, so are you." I ran. I threw open the door and ran.
Room 8 was a funeral home. In the center of the room was a casket, and I knew what I would find inside if I looked, but I had to see. I walked to the casket on legs that felt like they would give out at any moment. I looked inside. It was Emma. Not the hollow version, not the wrong version, but Emma as she really was. Peaceful, still, dead. Except her eyes were open, and she was looking at me. "David," she whispered, her lips barely moving. "Don't come any closer." "Emma," I sobbed, reaching for her. "I'm here. I'm gonna get you out." "You can't," she said, and tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm not really here, David. I'm nowhere. I'm in room 10, living a life that isn't real, and I don't even know it anymore. The me that's here, in this casket, this is all that's left of who I really was. The house took everything else." "Then I'll get that back," I said fiercely. "I'll get you back." She smiled, sad and small. "Room 9 is coming. You have to make a choice. You can give up, turn around, and the house will let you leave. You'll go home, back to your real life, and you'll forget this place. You'll forget I was ever here." "Never," I said. "I would never forget you." "Or," she continued, "you can go into room 9. You can try to win. But if you do, David, if you make it to the end, you won't escape. You'll just end up in your own version of room 10. You'll go home thinking you saved me, but it won't be real. And eventually the house will feed on you until there's nothing left, and someone else will come looking for you." "There has to be another way," I pleaded. "There is," she whispered. "Room 9 isn't the end. There's a door in room 9 that no one takes because they think they've won. It's small and hidden, and it only appears for people who understand what the house really is. It leads to the real room 10, the one where all the lost people are, the ones who didn't make it, the ones who are trapped in their own false realities. How do I find it?" "You don't look for it," she said. "You accept it. You accept that the house has you, that there's no winning, no escape. The moment you give up hope, the moment you accept that you're lost forever, that's when you'll see it." "That's impossible," I said. "If I give up hope, I'll just stay here." Emma's image began to fade, the casket becoming translucent. "Hope is what the house feeds on, David. Hope keeps you playing the game. It's the only way." I watched her disappear, and I stood there in that funeral home for a long time, trying to understand what she meant. Eventually, I opened the door to room 9. Room 9 was my apartment, not my childhood home, but my actual place back in Phoenix. Every detail was perfect. My couch, my TV, my gaming setup, my jacket thrown over the back of a chair like I'd just come home. And sitting at my kitchen table, waiting for me with a cup of coffee, was Emma. Not dead, not hollow, but alive and healthy and grinning at me like she always used to. "David," she said, standing up and pulling me into a hug. "Oh my God, I've been so worried. You weren't answering your phone, and I thought, are you okay? Where have you been?" It was so perfect, so real. Every part of me wanted to believe it, to just accept this gift and go on with my life. But I'd seen her in the casket. I'd heard her warning. "This isn't real," I said, and my voice cracked. Emma's smile faltered. "What are you talking about? Of course it's real. You're home, David. You're safe." "No," I said, pulling away from her. "You're not Emma. You're what the house wants me to think is Emma." The apartment began to flicker, like a TV with bad reception. Emma's face twisted into something angry, something that wasn't my sister at all.
"You could have had this," it said, in a voice that echoed and overlapped with 100 other voices. "I don't want fake happiness," I said, and I closed my eyes. I thought about Emma, the real Emma, trapped somewhere in this hellish place. I thought about going home without her, having to tell Mom and Dad that I'd failed. I thought about living the rest of my life knowing I'd given up. And I accepted it. I accepted that I might never leave, that I might become another missing person, another cold case, another face on a website that no one would remember. I let go of hope. The moment I did, I felt something change. The air shifted, and when I opened my eyes, I saw it. A small door in the corner of the room, barely 3 feet tall, almost invisible against the wall. It hadn't been there before. The fake Emma screamed, a horrible sound that wasn't human as I walked toward that door. The apartment dissolved around me, walls melting, furniture warping, until there was nothing left but darkness and that tiny door. I got on my hands and knees and crawled through. On the other side was a room like none of the others. It was vast, impossibly so, stretching out in all directions, and it was full of people. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, all standing perfectly still, their eyes open but unseeing. They were arranged in rows, like soldiers, like a museum exhibit, like a collection. I walked among them, looking at their faces, and I recognized some of them from missing persons cases I'd researched while looking for Emma. They were all trapped in their own false realities, living lives that weren't real, while their bodies stood here, empty shells, feeding the house. And in the center of them all was Emma. I ran to her, grabbing her shoulders. "Emma! Emma, wake up!" Her eyes didn't move. Her chest rose and fell with breath, but there was no one home. "How do I get you out?" I screamed at the empty room. No answer came, just silence and the horrible sight of all these lost people. I tried everything. I shook her. I called her name. I screamed in her face. Nothing worked, and slowly I felt myself growing weaker, colder. The house was feeding on me now, draining me like it had drained all the others. I sank to my knees in front of my sister, and I cried. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I tried so hard to find you." That's when I felt it, a hand on my shoulder. I looked up, and Emma was looking at me, really looking at me, with recognition in her eyes. "David?" she said, her voice rusty, like she hadn't spoken in years. "Is that really you?" "Yes," I sobbed. "Yes, it's me. I'm here." "How?" She looked around, confusion and horror dawning on her face as she saw where she was. Oh God, I thought I was home. I thought I'd been home this whole time, but it wasn't real. None of it was real." "We need to get out of here," I said, trying to pull her toward the door I'd come through. But it was gone. The small door had disappeared. "There's no way out. Not from here, David. This is the real room 10, David. This is where the house keeps us." "Then we make our own way out," I said fiercely. "We didn't come this far to give up now." I looked around the room, searching for something, anything that could help us. And that's when I saw them. The others were starting to wake up. One by one, their eyes were focusing, their bodies beginning to move. My presence here, my refusal to accept the false reality, was disrupting whatever held them. "Everyone," Emma said, understanding dawning. "Wake up. This isn't real. You're trapped, but you don't have to stay trapped." More people began to stir. A woman near me gasped and fell to her knees. A man stumbled backward, looking at his hands like he'd never seen them before. And as they woke, I felt the house shudder. It was angry. It was scared. "The house feeds on isolation," Emma said, understanding dawning, "on people accepting their individual false realities. But if we all wake up at once, if we all reject it together—" We didn't need to finish the thought. Emma started helping people wake up, shaking them, calling out to them. Others joined in as they regained consciousness. The room began to shake, the walls cracking, pieces of the ceiling falling. And then I saw it, a doorway forming in the wall. Not a small hidden door this time, but a massive opening, and beyond it I could see the desert, the real desert, bathed in morning light. "Run!" Emma screamed. "Everyone run!" We ran, hundreds of us, pouring out of that impossible room, through the doorway, out into the clean, cold desert air. Behind us, the house was collapsing, folding in on itself with a sound like a scream.
Emma grabbed my hand as we ran, and we didn't stop until we were at my car, until the house was just a memory of dust in the distance. We sat there in silence for a long time, watching the sun come up. "Thank you," Emma finally said. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Never," I said, squeezing her hand. "I will never give up on you." The police didn't believe our story, of course. How could they? But when dozens of missing persons started showing up in the desert outside Phoenix, all telling variations of the same impossible tale, they had to pay attention. Some of the people we saved went home. Some couldn't. Too much time had passed. Their families had moved on. Their lives had moved on without them. Emma and I were lucky. Mom and Dad still had hope. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder. I wonder if we really escaped, or if this is just another version of Room 10, more sophisticated than the others. I wonder if I'm still standing in that vast room, empty-eyed, while some version of me lives this life. The only thing that keeps me sane is Emma. Real or not, she's here with me. And I guess that's what matters. Although, yesterday, I noticed something strange. There was a small etching on my front door, almost invisible unless you knew to look for it. Just a number, carved into the wood. It said 11.